Oh, good. My remote control is working. Good afternoon, Composition 1 class. This is an international group that I'm talking to. So the first thing I'm going to say is this is our only video lecture. So if you don't figure out how to log in to the cyber lecture and watch this by Thursday, then we'll talk about it and we'll make sure that you can access it after we have class on Thursday. What we're going to focus on today is how to form arguments and how to be effective in English writing. We have to put it into context. This is, I am going to talk about sort of Western philosophy and the approach to making an argument. I'm not going to go into much detail, but I'm going to mention a few famous people, Plato and Aristotle, better known as Platon and Aristoteles in Korea. I think that's closer to their real names, the pronunciation. I'm not going to use the textbook very much, but I'm going to focus on what you did for homework. I think the most important thing is that it looks like everybody did their homework honestly and didn't generate any answers using programs or artificial intelligence, that kind of thing. It's clear from some of the grammatical mistakes that this is your own work, which is important because you can't develop your own ability if you're just relying on computer programs to shortcut all the time. Of course, when you get a job, you may want to do that. That's up to you. But we should understand, as human beings, we should understand how to make arguments and use writing effectively, and then we can use the tools better when we need to. So some students didn't hand in their homework. We'll talk about that in class as well, but it's really important that you do the assignments and take them seriously so that you come out of this class feeling like you've developed your skill. The first thing I'm going to say, this is the title here, as you can see, Argumentation. I thought the best definition I could find was from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and I'll be quoting from it now when I read this. This is published last year, and the editors are Edward Zalta and Uri Nodelman, just so I can cover my copyright obligations. But yeah, Stanford, very famous university, elite. It was this definition was first published in 2021, but it's been republished since then. This is what they say pertaining to argument and argumentation. Argument is a central concept for philosophy. Philosophers rely heavily on arguments to justify claims, and these practices have been motivating reflections on what arguments and argumentation are for millennia. Millennia meaning thousands of years. Moreover, argumentative practices are also pervasive elsewhere. They permeate scientific inquiry, legal procedures, education, and political institutions. The study of argumentation is an interdisciplinary field of inquiry involving philosophers, language theorists, legal scholars, cognitive scientists, computer scientists, and political scientists, among many others, including yours truly, English literature professor. This entry provides an overview of the literature on argumentation, drawing primarily on philosophical sources, but also engaging extensively with relevant sources from other disciplines. That's a mouthful, and there's a lot of subheadings, terminology, types of argument, types of argumentation, and so on. I never studied this when I was an undergrad, so I'm not going to try and explain all of the subtleties of argumentation to you, but we'll simplify it. What the professors said, the Stanford professors, so the editors said, was that you have to make a claim and you have to justify I'm going to run out of space here. Justify the claim with the use of logical reasoning, which is what I already wrote up on the board on my own before I dug up this definition. So the primary means for you to make an effective argument is to include reasons in the form of supporting sentences that are logical. And how effective that logic is also dependent on how you arrange them, what order you put those sentences in, and how they're connected to each other. You may remember I mentioned one of the fundamentals of writing you should keep in mind is coherence. And these arrangement, coherence, organization are all related ideas. They're not exactly the same thing, but coherence means things that are connected to each other and as a unified whole create something that we can understand. And the way that you do that is by making things connected sort of the way organs are in your body. Everything has a function, and those functions are tied to an overall plan. And when they're arranged the way they are genetically, and the body is built around that plan, and your body is healthy, then it works very well. I guess probably the best examples of functional organic bodies are maybe Olympic athletes. They're the ones that focus on sort of optimizing the function of their bodies so that they can perform at the top level in the world. That might be a good comparison or a good example. Like I said, in this class, there's sort of there's going to be a certain amount of content that we are using and engaging, and since it's international studies students mostly from different countries, we have 2 from Korea and many from other countries. The topics that I choose are going to be international topics that suit your studies and hopefully your interests too. The worst thing that happens with writing is that you are writing about something that you don't care about or you're not interested in, and it doesn't seem useful and it doesn't seem valuable. If you have a purpose in your writing and you're motivated, then your writing will be naturally, it'll be more interesting for you. You'll be more focused and your writing will come out better. One thing I should mention overall for all of you who did your homework, not everyone, and not in every instance, but I mentioned I'm very interested in your perspective. I want you to ground your arguments in your own context, right? So you can do that. You can do that, which I think there is a lack of that in some of the answers. Especially since we're doing this class with an international group of students, you should make sure that you're talking about, you mention the name of your country, right? You just don't say, serve the country. If you want to make that broad argument, if you want to make that point, that's fine. But locating the necessity of doing something like military service or military spending or roles of men and women contributing to the military, those are some of the questions that I posed to you for your homework. And it is quite a bit different, if you live in South Korea and you're technically still at war with another country north of you, as opposed to Canada, which has no countries on its border except for the United States, which we did go to war with before. Famously, about 200 years ago in 1812, we had a war, but it was not Canada yet. That was still the British Empire fighting with the, newly created United States of America. So we joke around about that war, but it really wasn't between Canada and the United States. It was between the British Empire and the United States. Just some of the attacks were made back and forth between Canada and the United States. But anyway, the point is, mandatory military service has a greater urgency in this context, in the Korean context, than it does in other countries. And your country may be similar or different, and you may argue in favor or against, because I did phrase it as a debate. Those questions were debate questions because I wanted to present things that had basically two options. There's more than two options. There's more than just yes or no. It's much more complicated than that. But in a conventional debate, you have to pick a side, and then whether you agree with the policy in principle or not, you have to argue effectively your case, your side, right? So in the case of a debate, there's always going to be counter arguments. When you answer a debate question, if a professor or if your boss, if a company or a client or anybody else wants to debate something with you, it means that there has to be some back and forth, right? You have to present an argument, and then there has to be a counter argument. They have to sort of respond, and then another response, and it goes back and forth until both sides run out of ideas and different ways of looking at the issue, and then there's a judgment about which side has debated the point more effectively. How to judge that, we'll talk about another day, I think. But I think in the course of this lecture today, I'm going to give you enough to think about so that you'll be able to know in some certain specific ways what you can do to strengthen your points of debate, your argument. So this is one of the things that people did. And I say this in all of my writing classes, and I repeat it. There is a time and a place for you to be personal, and it may be an email, it may be a letter or a text message or something like that. Certainly those types of writing, personal pronouns are fine. But when you're doing, when you're arguing, when you're presenting a thesis, which you claim is correct and justified based on these reasons, then you should frame the way you say it with an impersonal voice. Don't use I or we or us or something like that, just because that limits the scope and the support of your argument. When it's just obviously going to be a stronger statement to say that something is, rather than I think so, right? So, for example, one student, I printed off a bunch of